Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion at Google I/O on lessons from founders. My name is Mary Grove, and I'm the director of Google for Entrepreneurs. Google began as a startup in a garage some 15 years ago, and that spirit of entrepreneurship is very much a part of our DNA. It is our team's mission to empower the next generation of startups to be successful around the world. We created Google for Entrepreneurs specifically as the central resource to launch programs and partnerships to empower entrepreneurs around the globe. So as a team, we focus on two things. The first is on building community and fostering entrepreneurship around the world. So we work with about 30 different accelerators and incubators and co-working spaces around the globe. And the second thing we focus on is on equipping entrepreneurs with products and technology that they need to be successful in launching and growing their businesses. So we are very privileged and lucky to work with and learn from entrepreneurs in over 100 countries around the world. You can learn more about our programs at google.com/entrepreneurs. So today, we are very fortunate to be joined by 4 incredible startup founders and serial entrepreneurs to share with us their insights and lessons that they've learned along their journeys. So let me please start by introducing our panel. First, please welcome Slava Rubin. Slava is the co-founder and CEO of Indiegogo, the world's largest global crowdfunding platform. Indiegogo distributes millions of dollars across its platform every week, and they are really focused on empowering individuals to raise funds for any idea, be it creative, be it cause-related, or be it entrepreneurial. Slava recently attended the White House signing of the historic Jobs Act as a representative of the crowdfunding community, and he also founded Music Against Myeloma, an annual charity event to raise funds for cancer awareness. And we've had an opportunity to partner closely with Slava and his team over the last couple years, and really glad to welcome him here today. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Julia Hartz. And Julia is the co-founder and CEO of Eventbrite, dedicated to democratizing ticketing. And they have enabled the purchase of over 100 million tickets on the Eventbrite platform. Julia is focused on the happiness and productivity and the growth of the team at Eventbrite, and she has fostered a culture there that has landed Eventbrite on the list of the top 5 best places to work in the Bay Area for 2 consecutive years. Before founding Eventbrite with her husband, Kevin, Julia led TV development at MTV Networks and FX Networks. So welcome, Julia. Next, please welcome Caterina, who is the founder and CEO of Findery. Findery is an augmented reality app which makes places come alive and launched in public beta last October. Prior to that, Caterina co-founded Hunch, a search and discovery engine that was acquired by eBay in 2011. And before that, she co-founded the popular photo-sharing site Flickr, which Yahoo acquired in 2005. Caterina sits on the board of Creative Commons, and she chairs the board of directors of Etsy. She was also named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. And please welcome Mary Lou Jepsen. Mary Lou is a serial entrepreneur who has founded or co-founded 4 different startups, and she has served as CEO or CTO or both for all of them, including One Laptop per Child, Pixel Key, NY3D, and Micro Display Core. Mary Lou has really disrupted the display industry, and she is currently the head of the display division at Google X. Mary Lou has been a tenure-track professor at MIT. She was CTO of Intel's display division. She's been ranked in the top 50 female computer scientists of all time by the Anita Borg Institute, and she also made Time Magazine's list of 100 most influential people in the world. So we are on the shoulders of giants today and looking forward to a great discussion. What we'll do is I will kick it off with some questions for our panel, and in a while we will turn it over to the audience to take some questions. So start thinking about them now, and we'll open up the floor to questions in about 15 minutes. So thank you all for joining us, and welcome. So we know today that the web is democratizing entrepreneurship more than ever, and there are new models and new media as possible that more than ever before. So I'd like to start by asking each of you to spend a minute helping us set the context of why now. And for each of you, please share the key insight with us that really led you to develop and disrupt the industries that you're in, starting with Slava.
All right. First, let me just say it's a real honor to be on this panel. Just several years ago, I went to I/O when I was at Google campus, and just to be here is incredible, and obviously incredible panelists. So, Indiegogo was from 2006. There's two co-founders and I. We got together, Eric, Danae, and I were overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, and we were sharing our experiences of how frustrated we are to try to use the internet to raise money. So if you could just go back 7 years to 2006, you have YouTube is not owned by Google yet, Twitter is nascent, you have MySpace is way bigger than Facebook, and Obama is not a word for most people. And it was really difficult to raise money using MySpace, essentially, and PayPal. And my dad died of cancer when I was 15, and then 10 years later, I decided to do something about it for a New Year's resolution, so I started a charity, and I wanted to use the internet because I thought I was a little tech savvy, and it was very difficult. Eric was on the board of a theater company, and he was trying to raise money, and Danae was working with different filmmakers and entrepreneurs, and we thought, YouTube is doing something interesting in the media space, and there's other companies that are disrupting other spaces like eBay and Prosper was new. Why is it that the ultimate democratization tool hasn't really created access to capital for anyone? It is still all a gated experience. So we were actually completely naive and had not been entrepreneurs before, and we launched in January 2008. I would say that there's a lot of myths out there as to how you need to become an entrepreneur, whether it is you need to have a lot of money to start off with, whether it is that you need to have a perfect marketing plan, you need to have a really good business plan, you need to have done a lot of research. I think the barriers to entry are so low that you could so quickly be able to identify whether or not you could gain traction and move fast in whatever direction you can go based on data. And that is something that 20 years ago, you used a business plan to get that feedback. Hey, professor, what do you think of my business plan? Then give me feedback. Now you could actually very quickly use your business plan online, which is actually just right away getting validation from the market. A perfect example of that, and I'll end here, is we just actually had the company that got second place at CES for most innovative new product was funded on Indiegogo. The Misfit Shine, and they raised nearly $1 million, and this was just an idea. And it was an idea that VCs weren't sure if they wanted to fund. And it's just so interesting now how it's becoming very validated and it's going out to the market. And we balance that with things like the first ever crowdfunded baby. Yeah. The couple was not able to get insurance as needed, and they were able to get the in vitro fertilization funded through the public. Or you have Oscar Award winners from just this last February. So I think it's a great time to really press forward, and I'll have other thoughts.
Wow, I wish I would have thought about that. Crowdfunded baby. Could you do that retroactively or no? Can you do that retroactively or no? So I'm the co-founder and president of Eventbrite, and I started Eventbrite with my now husband, who was my fiance, and our third co-founder, Renaud Visage. And I wanted to echo some of the sentiments that Slava had about sort of what you need to get started. And I think that what we did in the beginning was we started with the notion that we really did want to democratize an industry by harnessing the power of technology. And I think that what we thought about back then in 2007, which seems like so long ago, was that everybody was thinking about the future and about sort of the proliferation of our online worlds and how we'd be living in a more virtual world, and over the course of a few years that our entire world would be sort of completely online, and that we would move farther and farther away from personal relationships. And our thesis was that actually you could use technology and the social graph really to bring people together offline easier. And I think what we've seen happen is just that. I think that going back to those early days, the three of us, we bootstrapped the company. We didn't need many resources to test this theory out. We needed a community that liked to get together, which just so happened to be the tech community of all places, and we needed to build a great product. And so we were very heads down on what mattered to us, which was truly just the product and our customer. And it was like that for 4 years. And I think that when I look back at when we did actually end up raising money, we knew a lot about ourselves, and we also knew a lot about what was happening in the tech world, what was happening with social, what was happening with mobile, what was on the horizon for data. And that helped us understand how powerful this product that we had built could be, and it helped us obviously raise money, quite quickly at that point. And so, from a very, small germ of an idea and really no money, we were able to kind of set our own pace and test this theory over time. And I think what comes to mind today is when you think about how you spend your time, whether it be at a conference like Google I/O or at a festival or running an obstacle race, those offline experiences are incredibly powerful because those are indelible memories. And while we're capturing memories on our Google Glasses, those are the types of things at these offline experiences that you're never going to quite forget as easily as a newsfeed article that you read. And so I think we're really understanding the power of the live experience, which hopefully you guys are all experiencing today.
Is this on? Now it is. I'm very jealous of the 4-year, is it? Yeah. Kind of startup path. I've tried to do that, but I always went broke before the 4 years were out. I'm in many ways an accidental entrepreneur. I am someone who always loved computers, but I was an English major and I studied art, and I was, interested in other things. But one thing I think is common to me, and probably everybody on this panel and any entrepreneurs in the room, is that you are the kind of person that sees the possibility in things, and you can't help but, when you're out in the world, see things that need fixing or problems that need solving or ways that you could help, and also a sense of that you could build this thing, that you could make this thing, that if you just kind of sit down at your computer and start coding, you can actually build something that can change the lives of people. And this is I think kind of where the impulse comes from. And this is I don't until I was in my mid-30s, I didn't self-identify as an entrepreneur. And yet, if I looked at all of the things that I had done, I was always a starter. I was always a kind of a person who just developed things in my spare time and just like hacked on stuff at night and on weekends when I wasn't at work. And that is, I think, kind of where the kind of the strong tendency has come from. In all of the companies that I've built, including my current one, my last one, the first one, all of them, the ones that nobody's even heard about, and the ones that failed miserably and are lost in the sands of time. Those are all kind of came from that same general impulse.
Why now? I just started a new effort at Google X, and I can't talk much about it, but why now there's, in some sense at Google X, it's a bit like the hardware division of Google, and there's no more silicon in Silicon Valley. It's all, iPhone apps and whatever, Nexus apps and so forth. But I loved hardware. I loved flashing colored lights as a kid, and I just kept going with that. So I did a lot of art and electrical engineering and optics and things like that. So that, for me, came together in displays. And I used to make really, really expensive things, one-of-a-kind things, designed a system to project a video on the moon for all of humanity to see. And I decided, wow, democratization, this stuff was happening about 10 years ago in cellular technology, and I thought, how do we get data to all the people of the world, not just the rich people? So I was lucky enough to meet Nicholas Negroponte and start One Laptop Per Child with him, and I became I hadn't designed a laptop before, but I designed the $100 laptop, and I got in an access to fabs that nobody got access to at the level that I did. And I decided to start my next company. Again, I just always think, well, we're alive. How do we use the time the best? What can I do today? And what's the sort of imprint, the impact that I can contribute to? So I started a company in 2008 called Pixel Chi, given the access I've gotten in a pretty broken part of the hardware industry, which is the display industry, which runs on and off between 0 and negative 20% margin, and has slashed pretty much all R&D for the last 10 years. So we're one of the few organizations that's done some innovative R&D in the display industry. And it's my belief that the devices that we use, from the smallest to the largest, are pretty much, if you look from a cost structure, a use structure, and a power structure, screens, given the cloud has happened. And so now is, because it's completely broken, the funding models are completely screwed up. VCs used to have 30, 40 X routine. Now they struggle with 1 X routine. Angel funding isn't sufficient for hardware. And I thought, roll up my sleeves, figure it out. So I moved to Asia and learned Chinese and was pretty effective. But now I'm back in the Bay Area working for Sergey.
So great, thank you. Just curious, a quick show of hands, how many entrepreneurs in the room today? About 50%. How many aspiring entrepreneurs? Great, great. Well, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to turn quickly. We often speak about the importance of team and how that's just the most fundamental part of a startup. Julia, I'd love to ask you some of your learnings and experiences from building and growing a team at Eventbrite and fostering the culture that has been clearly so meaningful.
Well, first and foremost, I can't stress enough, especially since I'm married to him, on how important it is to find the right partner. I think that what we've realized in building a co-foundership while also being married, we have to be quite careful about where we draw the lines and how we divide and conquer. But in hindsight, now 7 years later, I look back and understand that this is a lesson that all co-founders should learn, and that it starts with finding the right partners. And maybe they're not your co-founders, but they're the second people in line to you. They're the people that rally around your idea. But those people should have your best interest at heart, or the best interest of what's most important to you. And also, they should have complementary skills. I think that the fact that Kevin and our skills really don't overlap is such a great advantage for us, because we're able to have this incredible air cover now over, a company that's 250 people large, and that we operate together on a day-to-day basis. And when I think about how lucky we are to make all that work, I truly feel fortunate, but I also think that there are some really specific lessons in there for all co-founders. And then team, we have 21 minutes, 15 seconds. I could go on and on about team, but I think that when you get to the point where you start having people come on board, you have to remember and be humbled by the fact that they're giving up their career and livelihoods for your idea. That they're putting they're not giving up, I guess, but they're putting their careers at risk, right? And I look around the room every day and I think about that, and it humbles me, because I think there's something so powerful about being able to get somebody excited about your vision. And it still very much feels like, our vision is just this idea, and it's sort of this harebrained idea, and I can't believe that so many people would believe in that idea and come and sit alongside us and fight the battles that we're fighting with us. And so I think coming from that humble perspective and of understanding how incredible it is to be able to build a team is, I think, a really good starting point. And then I think when you have those teams, making sure that each person on your team can fully understand how their work impacts your vision, and that your vision is crystal clear and it's compelling. Those are some of the most important things that you need to do on a constant basis. I'm constantly reiterating our vision and making sure that every single person in the room understands how they directly impact that vision. And we're at 250. I don't know what's next in terms of how we scale. Some of you may be able to tell me that, but I still know the first and last name of every single person on the team and what they do and how that impacts the vision. So there's that ability to stay connected to your team that I think means all the world to them.
Thank you. Great. Mary Lou, a product question for you. I am just fascinated by the way you have been able to dramatically disrupt the display industry, slashing power consumption, slashing the cost. Talk to us about the process of bringing an idea into product, specifically physical product form, and what lessons have you learned in the various iterations of display that enable you to do the work that you do today?
It's interesting because these days the manufacturing is controlled by a small number of countries, primarily Taiwan and South Korea. And so you need to figure out how to deal with cultures, learn the languages, and so forth. But in many ways, it's freed me for the last decade because I don't really actually have to worry about manufacturing problems, yield reliability, because basically all I have to do is get a whole bunch of people to say yes, because they have my back. And if I can get about 100 people in the various fabs to say yes, they say no 99% of the time, but you work and noodle through. And so the industry has changed so much since when I started, when we built our own manufacturing facilities till now, that the problem I've sat on a bunch of startup panels over the past year, and I've noticed a rise of the multinational startup. And it's hard, 15 time zones and languages, but there's these huge advantages in doing that if you can navigate the cultural things. So the product stuff is sort of more cultural, and how to get people to come together in various, if you will, axes of creativity. Asia's creative in that they create, 1 million units a day of something, and maybe they're not sort of in some Silicon Valley terms, swinging for the fences in an innovative architecture. But boy, can you combine those two axes and the sensibility around these things, process windows and yields and drop to all of that has to work on any product you make. But a lot of the engineers there have never been allowed to get in the lab and break things and not do what I say, like violate what I say, and sort of creating, it comes back to team and creating these cultures where you can create these hybrids and take these super creative people and get them good on both axes, really. It's never a single individual. It's creating the team to do that.
Thank you. Caterina, you have built 3 successful consumer technologies, had 2 phenomenal exits. Can you talk with us about the process of exit and the different factors and consideration in your mind and how you navigated that?
Well, exits, there's always a kind of like a lot of stories behind the exits that are not visible or understood. So to kind of go back to Flickr, which was acquired by Yahoo in 2005. Flickr came out of a company that had failed. We had started a company to build a game, and we had started it in 2002, which, if you recall, was a terrible time to raise capital for anything, especially a consumer internet play. And it was also, we were also trying to do something that people didn't really understand. We were building a browser-based game. It was a massively multiplayer role-playing game. It was somewhat quirky. It was a bit odd, and it was not understood what the hell it was. People were like, can you buy it on the shelf at CompUSA? Like what is this thing? And the only things that you played in your browser at that time were, solitaire and casual games. And so we had a. It would be a kind of like an exaggeration. I mean, it would be an understatement to say really that we had trouble raising money. We were unable to raise any money. We prevailed upon our friends and family who finally gave us, we managed to scrape together $150,000, $200,000 to actually run our company, but nobody was getting paid. And it really kind of struck me, when Julia was talking about the team, that here are all these people, they're following, like, not only were the Flickr team members along for this crazy ride, but like most of us weren't getting paid. So it was a bit nuts. And to kind of get up every morning, the only guy that was getting paid was the guy who had 3 kids. So if you want to survive in this industry, it's actually been proven to be the case. Like in the Donner Party, only the single men were eaten. So get married and have children as fast as you can. So anyway, so the only guy who was getting paid was the guy who had 3 children. Survival, people. This is what it's about. Like this is like the startup business is like it's do or die. It's like it's like a revolution. You're like you win or you're dead. And this was kind of like that. So we were dying. We had about three months of money left in the bank. We were we were eating ramen and selling our furniture to make payroll, and then we said to hell with this. this is going to fail. This game is doomed, and we got to do something else. We only have 3 months of money left to pay our one guy. So, Stuart has this idea. He's like photo sharing. He wakes up in the middle of the night. He's got literally got a 103-degree fever. I was married to him at the time, so that's why we're waking up together with my co-founder. And he's like, we should do a photo sharing site. And I'm like, whatever. Drink some water, go back to bed. And so we talked about it a little bit more, and we figured, okay, well, there's a lot of things that we learn from the social aspects of our game. We can put this together. We can make a thing. We spent about 8 weeks developing this thing. We called it Flickr. It was a chat where you could drag and drop photos into a conversation. It was actually a POS, but it was widely noticed, actually, because this, if you recall back at the time, it was like 2003, social networking was on the rise, and people thought this was cool, and this was like social networking around photos, and it was sort of, so we were kind of like had hit it, and we kind of knew we'd hit it, because suddenly we were getting calls and people were interested in us, and we were 6 unknown people in Vancouver and nobody who would return. So it was kind of a thing. Anyway, we were talking about exits.
So many great insights and advice I just took away from there. Have children. Great ideas come.
But anyway, so this was the pivot, and then it was successful, and then we got a call from a bunch of acquirers, and then we were acquired.
Thank you. No.
Just to wrap up.
So amazing.
Sorry.
In just a couple minutes, we'll start taking questions from the audience. So I encourage you, if you have a question in mind, please go ahead and start lining up at the 2 microphones here. So next question is for Slava, and it's more of a policy-related question. I'm really intrigued by your work with the Jobs Act and representing the crowdfunding community. So please talk with us about the role that founders and entrepreneurs can play in advancing the conversation forward around tech policy.
Yeah, so I'll take a little bit of a windy road there. It was interesting when they asked about how many of you are entrepreneurs, how many of you raised your hands. I don't know if you would change your question if the question was how many of you are entrepreneurial. I actually think probably more of you are entrepreneurs than raised your hand. See, in our perspective of it, yes, entrepreneur might mean to actually have started the business or whatever, but we recruit mostly entrepreneurs. It's actually quite challenging in terms of when you want to be collaborative and authentic and all that. But see, there are certain types of people who say, oh, I didn't get to do that because there wasn't enough this, right? I didn't have enough money, enough time, that person didn't let me, we couldn't partner with that company. And there's sorts of type of people that say, I got to figure it out this way. And the people who don't take no for an answer and don't really care what the obstacle is in front of them are entrepreneurs. That's the spirit of the entrepreneur, which is see wall, run through it. But actually fail 5 times, so get your head hurt really hard, right? That's entrepreneur. And in my opinion, you're getting into a pet project, which is entrepreneurs can save the world. Which is entrepreneurs will figure out the solution to any problem. And it's really just a language that hasn't been fostered enough, which is it's obvious that we should learn math, okay? It became obvious that we should learn languages beyond English, cool. Now it's become obvious that we should all learn code, right? So you have code.org, you have Chicago starting to teach code into every high school, all this good stuff. It's just a matter of time before it becomes obvious that teaching in an experiential way, entrepreneurship, should be part of your curriculum from 7th grade, 3rd grade, or whatever grade. I mean, I've written stuff about this, which is kind of sad in my opinion, that when you're a little kid in kindergarten, you have those little toys that you play with. You get to play with fireman or woman, you get to play with nurse, you get to play with lawyer, doctor, you don't get to play with entrepreneur. And it might be because it's really hard to say entrepreneur, so we could just call it Gugu, whatever. But really, that's a statement as to how we grow up. And it's funny because when we graduate high school or college, we're all told to be innovative and leaders and all this stuff, but really what we're procured to do is to become bankers or developers or consultants or whatever you want to call it inside somebody else's organization, which is inside of a system that somebody else created. Why isn't it that we aren't being taught to be able to take risk, be creative, fail? It's totally good to fail. We just have to learn that, right? Learn from it. So for me, the idea of whether it's equity crowdfunding, which is where Indiegogo has had a lot of participation with the SEC and the White House and all that stuff, but also in terms of empowering more entrepreneurs. If you get off on the 6th floor of our office, which is at 965 Mission, which is right on the corner, the first word you'll see is a huge sign of the word empower. I mean, that is Indiegogo, which is to empower people to do what they didn't think is possible. See, if you empower an entrepreneur to do something, you could change the trajectory of the future. There could have been air there yesterday, and an entrepreneur will create reality. So it's just fascinating. So I think more of you should have raised your hands.
Great, great. We're going to do some rapid fire questions. So we'll try to do 1 minute each question, if possible. Please.
Hi, I'm Kent Nixon, and I guess this is a question for all of you, but specifically for Mary Lou, because my passion, I'm a computer engineer, and my passion is hardware. And I agree with what you're saying. A lot of the stuff out there nowadays is software as opposed to hardware. But when I look at a piece of hardware, I can say, wow, that's really great, but, and there's always that but, and I think I can make it better, but I have a specific set of skills, and it takes more than just me to make a great product. I mean, how do you go about finding people that meet the skill sets that you don't have? How do you go about even making the contacts to learn about that kind of stuff? Like, where would you even start, basically?
Yeah, interesting, because there's not a lot of hardware. IEEE has a ton of meetings every week here in the Bay Area, if you're in the Bay Area, but OLPC, One Laptop Per Child, the $100 laptop, it was a really small hardware team. It was just me for the first, 18 months, and then we grew to the massive size of, I think, 4 hardware engineers that were actually at OLPC and used kind of Asia Inc. and the people that I was able to create a team around. We were sort of dotted line architects for groups of low-level engineers in Asia. It means living on a plane. If you love it enough, you're willing to do that. It means learning the various languages and so forth. But it depends the scale of what you're trying to do. And if you're saying, yes, I like that, but you could join that team or take it apart, or it's hard because you can hack different things, but it tends to be a big thing hanging, a functional tethered prototype, and it's really hard for a VC to get. VCs actually, they don't have the core competence anymore in Silicon Valley, pretty much too. And I'm sure there's exceptions, but by and large, to fund or even to do diligence on hardware. But there are places that do fund hardware, and you can find them depending upon your bent. You do have to be creative. There are angels, certainly, and super angels to fund it. And there are, the hacker spaces if you need to borrow an oscilloscope or whatever, an SEM. But it's not easy, but then again, there's not this sort of path, there's not much competition, so there's an advantage.
Yes, please, question.
Yeah, so this is Dari from China. So actually, I have a question, but not specific to any of you guys. And so my question is, because we can find a lot of common factor for success, for successful founders. And so I want to know, what is your rating for the below 3 factors? They are vision, idea, and execution. So how can you rate these 3 factors, and what's the reason for that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So vision.
Vision.
Like
idea,
how would I rate mission?
Vision, idea,
Vision?
and execution.
Yeah. I would rate, if I had to stack rank them, I would
from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10.
I'm shooting in the dark here. I think I'll try to understand the question. I think that vision is really important when you're trying to lead a group of people. I think execution is how you get from point A to point B, as Caterina can attest to, as can we, and how you eventually get people to believe in your idea, but you don't really start doing anything without the idea. So I think they're all intrinsically linked, and so I'm not sure if I'd rank them, but I think that as an entrepreneur, I don't necessarily think you have to be the person who can sell the vision. I think you have to do what Slava said, which is be willing to run through as many walls as possible. I too, agree with him in terms of that's what makes an entrepreneur is just that eternal optimism. But I think that having that idea and having that moment that Stuart had when he woke up in the middle of the night is exactly what goes into this mixture. And then vision is something that really matters when you're trying to get people to sign on to your idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because nowadays we just feel like ideas, like we have a lot of same ideas, but no one just go ahead and execute them. So probably execution is one of the most important when you have the idea.
Well, I mean, that's how you make the idea into a reality. You have to execute. And honestly, like day to day, we're put to the task of executing, even as, 7 years into our vision, I guess. If you're not executing, then you really aren't able to grow a viable idea into a company and get people to support you. So yeah, I mean, I think they're all incredibly important.
Yep. Thank you.
I would say that idea is super important, is one of the 10 myths of entrepreneurship, meaning it's not, if it was so big of an idea, if it mattered so much, then the idea of a coffee shop would not become Starbucks, right? Obviously other people know that idea as well. So it's really about execution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
On this a little bit, but I'm hoping someone else will volunteer to chime in. My question is, how did you find your co-founder, and how did you know they were the right person, or did you?
Match.com, right?
A wedding.
So my co-founders were, there's two co-founders. One was the technical guy, so he and I worked at the same consulting firm for 8 years. We were best friends. We used to live together. He was on the tech side, so he had to round out his skill set, he thought, so to go get his MBA. So he went to Hartz to get his MBA while I kept on working. And like anybody who keeps on working, who has a friend that's getting their MBA, you go visit them for the weekend to get drunk for the weekend. And anybody who gets to get their MBA, they have to start a business, so they have to start coming up with ideas. So he met his co-founder, which is Danae, his friend at the time, which is Danae, and I flew out for dinner, and we were all just, talking about stuff, and idea was born.
So I'd like to ask each of our panelists to share with our entrepreneurial audience just one piece of parting advice, in no particular order.
Well, I think the main thing is, as Slava was saying earlier, it's very easy to do startups these days, so just really start from where you are with what you have. If you don't have a co-founder, start without a co-founder. I think a lot of the time, it's interesting, I get a lot of emails from entrepreneurs asking, where do I need a co-founder? I can't find a co-founder. How do I find a co-founder? That is actually a huge issue. Go to more weddings is one possibility. I mean, actually, whatever, luck favors the aggressive. So you should, go meet as many people as you can. It's easier if you're an extrovert. If you're an introvert, just go to everything and talk to everybody and find that co-founder out there. But really, just start making the thing that you want to make. If it just like if you can really do it with like a piece of paper and a pencil, do that. It'll come together. In fact, I'm an investor in Kickstarter as a competitor of Slava's. And I actually saw it when it was just a Photoshop file. It was actually just it was like an image in Photoshop. I was like, yeah, I see this.
Yeah, I think that, how sometimes people tell you, oh, that's hot, don't touch it, yet you still kind of need to touch it. And then you figure out that it was hotter than you thought. That your tolerance for heat was not higher than their tolerance for heat. It's interesting that you know what I'm talking about, right? Because most of you have probably done that. But see, here's the same thing in a different level. There's a macro social contract of what it means to be able to break through something or not as an entrepreneur, right? So we fall within these rules of your idea is not big enough because a VC told you. There's things like, it's I don't know marketing enough. I don't know PR enough. Right? There's all these different macro social contract concepts, which is the same thing if somebody told you it's hot. Yet you were all daring enough to touch, the kettle, the whatever. You should just experience it yourself and then learn for yourself your own truths. Because I dare you, you will see that most of those are just fiction. There are somebody else's truths that they could not break through that. right? So there's no reason that you would not be able to.
Mine is, my advice is, assuming that you start big and swing for the fences and just don't do something small, first off. But assuming you do, and you get to that point where you're taking on one of the largest companies in the world, even though you didn't mean to, I've never started to mean to, be prepared to give away most of your stock so that you can win that game, because otherwise you're crushed. And just plan that early on, what you're going to do if you happen at one laptop per child. I think there was 60 minutes expose on some of the large forces that we came up against, and a lot of the stories I haven't yet told about Pixel Chi. But when you do get in that seat, you have to be able to figure out a way where it's more attractive for those companies not to crush you. And that's very difficult. And if you can plan for success at the start, maybe you can sort of navigate through. That's, I think, the most difficult challenges I've faced in my career. And the other thing is, why do startups? If you just join a big company, I mean, I'm really bad at politics. I think if you do your own thing, you can actually, you're all in a little lifeboat. There might be leaks in it, but you get to be out on the sea yourself and figure out your own way and learn all the different things. And then maybe you can start to sort of leverage the sharp elbows in larger companies. Some people are better at it, but if you're not one for the politics of large companies, startups are great because everybody's in the same boat, willing to help each other. They're really fantastic environments. So go for it.
The biggest lesson that I've learned along this journey, and was a pretty big one for me coming from traditional media, is don't believe the hype. And I think I touch on that almost weekly when I think about what's important to us. And hype is a fairly vague term as I'm using it, which is either bad hype, the way Slava was just presenting, that you can't do something, you don't have enough experience, or there isn't money in X, or this idea is too played out. And it's also on the flip side that, God, things are going great. I'm great. I must be great. This is great. There's one thing about having confidence in yourself. There's the other thing in always looking at the next thing you need to be doing to making your product better, to making your team better, to making your brand better. And it's not about if you all you care about is the hype and all you're seeking is the hype. There's very little context, or there's nothing really underneath that. And that's where I tend to see things go awry. So try not to believe the hype, whether it be good or bad.
Great. Well, 3 words that we've heard consistently throughout our discussion are democratization, passion, and change the world. And we truly believe that entrepreneurs have transformative ability to change their communities, their companies, the world, and that when entrepreneurs succeed, all boats rise. So really appreciate all 4 of your time. Wish you the best of luck, and wish all of you in the audience the best of luck too. Thank you.